Most people think changing the clock is one of the smallest decisions a government can make. Twice a year, millions of Americans move the hands of a clock by 1 hour, complain about losing sleep, joke about feeling tired for a few days, and then life moves on. At least, that's what most people believe. But what if I told you that one vote in Washington could permanently change the way every American wakes up, drives to work, sends their children to school, and even experiences winter mornings for decades to come? Because that's exactly what happened. While much of the country was focused on inflation, international conflicts, and the upcoming election, lawmakers quietly voted on a bill that could reshape everyday life for more than 330 million people. At first glance, it sounded harmless. No new taxes, no trillion-dollar spending package, no dramatic military announcement. Just a proposal to stop changing the clocks forever. Simple, right? Maybe. But history has a strange habit of hiding its biggest lessons inside the smallest decisions. And if you dig beneath the headlines, you'll discover that America has already tried something very similar before. It didn't end the way people expected. In fact, it became one of the shortest-lived national experiments in modern American history. That's why this debate isn't really about clocks. It's about whether governments truly learn from history or simply repeat it. The recent House vote surprised many political observers. Support came from both Republicans and Democrats, making it appear as though Washington had finally found an issue everyone could agree on. In today's political climate, that's almost unheard of. Whenever both parties suddenly agree on something, it's usually worth asking one important question. What aren't we talking about? Supporters argued that ending the clock changes would eliminate confusion, reduce frustration, and give Americans brighter evenings throughout the year. On paper, it sounds appealing. Who doesn't enjoy more daylight after work? Who wouldn't like an extra hour to walk outside, play sports, enjoy dinner on the patio, or spend time with family before sunset? It's an attractive idea. And attractive ideas often move quickly through politics. BI7UT, governing isn't supposed to be about choosing the most attractive idea. It's supposed to be about choosing the safest one. That's where the conversation becomes far more complicated. Long before today's lawmakers debated permanent daylight saving time, another generation of politicians believed they had found the perfect solution to a national problem. Back then, America wasn't worried about changing clocks. It was worried about energy. Fuel shortages had shaken the country. Oil prices were climbing. Leaders searched desperately for ways to reduce consumption without asking Americans to dramatically change their lifestyles. Someone proposed a simple solution. Keep daylight saving time all year. More evening sunlight would supposedly reduce electricity use, lower fuel demand, and help the economy recover. The idea sounded logical. Congress approved it. The president signed it. Most Americans initially supported it. For a brief moment, the policy looked like an overwhelming success. Then winter arrived. That's when reality replaced optimism. Across northern states, sunrise began arriving dangerously late. Parents woke their children before dawn. School buses rolled through neighborhoods, while streets remained almost completely dark. Teachers noticed exhausted students struggling to stay awake. Police departments reported increasing concerns about visibility during morning traffic. Suddenly, what had looked like a convenient change became something much more serious. People weren't simply adjusting their clocks anymore. They were adjusting their lives. The debate shifted almost overnight. Instead of asking whether people enjoyed brighter evenings, Americans started asking a different question. What is the cost of darker mornings? That question divided experts. Economists focused on productivity. Business groups highlighted increased evening shopping. Sports industries welcomed longer daylight. Tourism officials predicted stronger local economies, but sleep researchers weren't celebrating. Neither were pediatricians. Traffic safety experts began collecting accident data. Medical organizations started warning about disrupted biological rhythms. Scientists reminded lawmakers that the human body isn't controlled by the clock hanging on your wall. It's controlled by sunlight. Move the clock, and you don't move the sun. That's a difference many people underestimate. For adults, adjusting might simply mean feeling tired for a few days. For young children, shift workers, emergency responders, farmers, and millions of commuters, the consequences can be much larger, especially during winter. Imagine sending a 7-year-old to a bus stop while the sky still looks like midnight. Imagine driving to work surrounded by school buses, cyclists, and pedestrians who are nearly impossible to see. Now imagine repeating that routine for months every year. Supporters argue the brighter evenings are worth it. Critics believe the darker mornings create risks that outweigh the benefits. Neither side sees the issue as trivial anymore. That's why today's debate feels so familiar to historians, because America has stood at this exact crossroads before, and history left behind a warning. The real question isn't whether people like sunshine after work. The real question is whether politicians are listening to the lessons history already taught. Because once a nationwide policy takes effect, reversing it isn't nearly as easy as changing the hands on a clock. And what happened next in Congress suggests this debate is only beginning. Now, this is where the conversation stops being about convenience and starts becoming about consequences. Because whenever government changes something that affects hundreds of millions of people every single day, one question should always come first. What does the evidence actually say? Not the campaign slogans, not the television interviews, not the social media headlines. The evidence. And that's where this debate takes an unexpected turn. For months, supporters of permanent daylight saving time have argued that longer evenings would improve quality of life. More daylight after work, more time for families, more business activity, more outdoor recreation. It's an attractive picture, but public policy isn't judged by how attractive it sounds. It's judged by what happens after the cameras leave. When lawmakers began looking beyond the political talking points, they found something surprising. Many of the country's most respected medical organizations weren't celebrating the proposal. In fact, they were warning against it. Sleep physicians, neurologists, public health researchers, and circadian rhythm experts all reached a remarkably similar conclusion. If America is going to stop changing its clocks, permanent standard time appears to match the body's natural biological clock far better than permanent daylight saving time. That distinction may sound technical. It isn't. Your body doesn't care what Congress calls 8 o'clock. It responds to sunlight. For thousands of years, human biology has been synchronized with sunrise and sunset. Hormones, body temperature, alertness, sleep cycles, all of them follow patterns shaped by natural light, not political decisions. Move the clock permanently away from the sun, and those patterns begin shifting. For some people, the effects are minor. For others, especially children, shift workers, older adults, and people already struggling with sleep disorders, the effects can become much more significant. Researchers have spent years studying what happens when societies drift away from natural daylight. Some studies suggest higher rates of sleep deprivation. Others point toward increased cardiovascular risk, reduced workplace productivity, more traffic accidents during darker mornings, and declining academic performance among students forced to begin their day before sunrise. None of these findings alone settle the debate, but together they raise an important question. If the scientific community is urging caution, why has politics become so certain? That's a question every democracy should ask itself. Because history shows that governments sometimes become captivated by simple slogans, and simple slogans often hide complicated realities. Who wouldn't want more sunshine? Who wouldn't enjoy brighter evenings? Those are emotionally powerful arguments, but governing requires more than emotional arguments. It requires weighing benefits against costs, even when those costs aren't immediately visible. That's what responsible leadership looks like. Not asking what sounds popular today, but asking what still makes sense 5 years from now. There's another part of this story that deserves attention. Notice how quickly the discussion changed. What began as a practical conversation about ending twice-yearly clock changes slowly transformed into something much more political. Instead of asking which system best serves the public, the conversation shifted toward which party could claim credit. That's where democracies often get into trouble. Because once a policy becomes a political trophy, compromise becomes much harder. Supporters stop evaluating evidence. Opponents stop trusting intentions. And suddenly, an issue that once united lawmakers begins dividing them. Ironically, the clock itself hasn't changed yet. Only the politics surrounding it have. Then there's the regional reality that rarely appears in national headlines. America isn't one climate. It isn't one sunrise. It isn't one winter. A family living in southern Florida experiences daylight very differently from a family living in northern Michigan or North Dakota. In parts of the South, later sunrises during winter may be manageable. Farther north, The same policy could leave children walking to school long before daylight arrives. That's why some lawmakers view this less as a national issue and more as a regional one. What benefits one part of the country may create challenges somewhere else. Uniform national policies work best when national conditions are relatively uniform. Time, surprisingly, isn't. Now imagine another possibility. Some states embrace permanent daylight saving time. Others reject it. Neighboring states suddenly operate on different clocks year-round. Businesses coordinating shipments across state lines begin adjusting schedules. Television broadcasts require new programming windows. Emergency management agencies rewrite communication protocols. Airlines, trucking companies, rail systems, financial markets, and interstate employers all begin adapting to a more fragmented system. None of those problems are impossible to solve, but none of them are free either. Sometimes consistency itself has value, even when nobody notices it. That's one of the hidden lessons of infrastructure. People rarely appreciate systems that simply work. They only notice them once they stop working. The same may be true for time. Perhaps that's why earlier generations eventually decided that national coordination mattered more than regional preference. Whether today's lawmakers reach the same conclusion remains uncertain. What is certain is that the debate has become much larger than clocks. It's become a debate about how democracies make decisions. Should history carry more weight? Should scientific evidence outweigh political messaging? Should public convenience outweigh long-term public health? None of those questions have easy answers. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. The most important decisions rarely arrive wrapped in dramatic speeches. Sometimes they arrive disguised as small adjustments. 1 hour forward, 1 hour back, until suddenly an entire nation discovers that changing time was never really about changing time at all. It was about deciding what kind of leadership people expect from those who govern. Because good governments don't simply ask what people want to hear. They ask what future generations will wish they had done. And history has a habit of remembering that difference long after the clocks have stopped changing.